I need to tell someone this before I lose my nerve or before they realize I know. My name is Alex Carson. I own the Crosswinds Motor Lodge off Highway 50 in rural Nevada. It's not much, 12 rooms, peeling paint, a neon sign that flickers more than it glows, but it's mine. Or at least it was my father's before he died and left me with the deed, the debt, and a slow march toward foreclosure. For the past 8 months, room 12 has been rented to the same family, the Griffiths. They pay in cash, always on time, never complain, and keep entirely to themselves. In this business, guests like that are a blessing. They've single-handedly kept me afloat when everything else was sinking. But I'm starting to think they're not human. And the worst part, I think they know that I know. I've ignored the signs because I desperately needed the money. You'd have done the same thing, right? When you're 3 months behind the mortgage and the bank is circling like vultures, you don't ask questions about your best-paying tenants. You smile, you nod, you take the cash, and pretend not to notice the things that don't add up. Now I'm trapped between financial ruin and something far worse, something I don't even have a name for yet. I've been complicit in whatever they are, whatever they're doing, and I think it might be too late to walk away. So I'm telling you this now, while I still can. The Crosswinds Motor Lodge was built in 1973, back when Highway 50 still mattered and people actually drove through towns instead of around them. Now it's a relic, mint green paint curled back like dead skin, a roof that leaks in 3 places, and that damn neon sign my father refused to replace even when half the letters stopped working. On good nights, I get 2, maybe 3 rooms occupied. Truckers, travelers whose GPS took a wrong turn, the occasional couple fleeing a broken-down car and a failed road trip. I got this place 2 years ago when my father had a heart attack in the office, paperwork still spread across the table. Along with the motel came his debts, years of deferred maintenance, predatory loans, and the kind of optimism that doesn't survive contact with reality. I've tried everything. Online listings, discount booking sites. I even scraped together enough to repaint the office thinking curb appeal might matter. It didn't. My daughter, Emma, is in her 2nd year of community college 2 hours south, studying to be a nurse. She's the only reason I haven't walked away. Her tuition, her books, her chance at a life that isn't this, that's what keeps me here, smiling at strangers and pretending the water pressure is fine. Out here, isolation isn't poetic, it's a geographical fact. The nearest neighbor is a gas station 3 miles down the highway. We get tumbleweeds, dust storms, and silence so deep it feels like pressure against your ears. It's the kind of place where you're grateful for any business, any sign of life. Before the Griffiths, I was drowning. Then they arrived, and for 8 months, I've been able to breathe. My father used to say, "Some money comes with strings, Alex. You just can't always see them in the dark." I'm starting to understand what he meant. The Griffiths arrived on a September evening, just after sunset, pulling into the parking lot in a black 1967 Lincoln Continental, the kind of car you see in funeral processions or old mob films. Mr. Griffith stepped out first, tall, pale, impeccably dressed in a charcoal-colored suit that looked tailored and expensive. His manners were old-fashioned, almost theatrical. He shook my hand with a firm grip and called me Miss Carson, like we were conducting business in another century. Mrs. Griffith emerged next, elegant, soft-spoken, wearing a navy dress that seemed too formal for a roadside motel. When she shook my hand, her fingers were cold. Not cool, cold, like she'd been holding ice. Their children followed, a boy around 10 and a girl no older than 7, both unnervingly quiet and polite. They didn't fidget or complain or ask for the Wi-Fi password. They just stood there, hands folded, watching me with dark, unblinking eyes. Mr. Griffith paid 6 months upfront in cash, crisp $100 bills counted out on the desk without hesitation. He requested privacy, no housekeeping, and thanked me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That was 8 months ago. They've extended their stay twice since. Here's the thing I didn't notice at first. I have never seen them during the day. Not once.
Mr. Griffith always comes to the office after sunset, 9, 10, sometimes later, to pay, exchange pleasantries, and politely decline any offer of assistance. When I asked once if everything was comfortable, he simply said, "We value our rest. Sunlight is disruptive." One morning, I walked past room 12 and noticed the curtains weren't just closed, they were taped to the window frame with duct tape, completely sealing out the light. I mentioned it casually the next time I saw him. He smiled and repeated, almost word for word, "We value our rest." Denise, the elderly woman who helps with housekeeping twice a week, tried to enter room 12 one afternoon. The door was locked from the inside, which was odd since checkout isn't until 11. She knocked. No answer. She pressed her ear to the door and heard nothing. No television, no movement, no breathing. "Like a tomb," she said, laughing nervously. I laughed too. Weird guests are still paying guests, right? But the unease had already started to settle in, quiet and persistent, like dust. The strangeness didn't arrive all at once. It accumulated, incident by incident, until ignoring it required active effort. It started with the guest in room 11, a truck driver named Randy, mid-50s, the kind of guy who'd seen everything and never complained. He came to the office at 2 in the morning, bags already packed, and said he was checking out early. When I asked why, he hesitated, then said he'd heard scratching on the shared wall with room 12, persistent, rhythmic, like nails on wood, and voices, low murmuring in a language he didn't recognize, though he swore it sounded old, like something from a documentary about ancient civilizations. "And the smell," he added, rubbing his face, "like old copper, made me feel sick." I apologized, offered a partial refund, and promised to investigate. I knocked on room 12's door the next evening. Mr. Griffith answered with his usual calm politeness, listened to my concern, and assured me there had been no disturbance. He smiled. I left. Randy didn't come back. Then I started noticing smaller things. The Griffiths never ate. Not at the diner 6 miles down the road, not at the gas station, nowhere. I'd mentioned a few local spots once, trying to be helpful, and Mr. Griffith politely declined. "We have very particular dietary needs," he said smoothly. "We prefer to source our meals privately." I didn't ask what that meant. One night, around midnight, I was locking up the office when I saw them, the children, playing outside room 12 beneath the flickering neon sign. They were barefoot on the cold October asphalt, moving with the fluid, unnatural grace, their faces pale as bone under the red and blue light. I raised my hand to wave. Both of them turned in perfect unison, staring at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. No smiles, no acknowledgement, just staring. Then, without a sound, they glided back into the room and closed the door. I stood there for 5 minutes, heart pounding, telling myself I had imagined the wrongness of it. The final straw, or what should have been, came from Denise. She pulled me aside one morning, voice low, and said she'd seen Mr. Griffith at 3 a.m. carrying a large duffel bag from the trunk of that black Lincoln into room 12. It looked heavy. Something dark had leaked from the bottom, staining the asphalt. She thought it was oil at first, but when she walked past the spot later, it smelled like iron. "I didn't ask," Denise said, eyes worried, "and I don't think you should either." I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake constructing rational explanations. They were in witness protection. They were eccentric rich people. They were just intensely private. The bills were paid. The account was stable. What's the harm in looking the other way? One night I opened my laptop and typed "strange guests," then "pale family" into the search bar. My finger hovered over the enter key. I closed the laptop. I was afraid of what I might find. It happened at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I checked my phone when I heard the scream. It wasn't loud, more like a choked gasp cut off almost immediately. I was in the office going over bills I couldn't pay when the sound sliced through the desert silence. I grabbed the flashlight from under the desk and ran outside, my breath fogging in the cold October air. Near the dumpsters, I found him. A man, maybe 30, dressed in layers like a drifter or hitchhiker. He was slumped against the cinder block wall, pale and sweating despite the cold, his hands clasped around his neck. Blood was seeping between his fingers, dark and wet in the beam of my flashlight. His eyes were wide, glassy with terror. "Are you okay? What happened?" I knelt beside him, already pulling out my phone. He tried to speak, his voice a ragged whisper. They were just standing there, watching. Then the man, he smiled, and I couldn't move. His eyes rolled back and he slumped forward, unconscious. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher said an ambulance was 20 minutes out. I pressed a towel from the office against his neck, trying to stay calm, trying not to look at room 12, whose door I swore had been open a crack just moments before. When the paramedics finally arrived, the man was awake but confused, disoriented. He couldn't remember his name or how he'd gotten here. The wound on his neck was shallow, 2 small punctures, neat and precise, like an animal bite. The EMTs exchanged glances. One suggested a dog attack. The other muttered something about self-harm or drug use. They loaded him into the ambulance and left, taillights disappearing down the empty highway. I stood alone in the parking lot, the flashlight heavy in my hand. That's when I saw it. The curtain in room 12. It twitched, just slightly, then went still. I walked back to the office slowly, my legs numb, my mind racing. I locked the door behind me, sat down at the desk, and let the thought I'd been avoiding for weeks finally form, fully and undeniably. Vampires. I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and searched. Vampire, bloodsucker, Nosferatu. I read folktales, fiction, myth, and medical explanations for centuries-old superstitions. Except now, none of it felt fictional. The signs aligned with horrifying clarity. Nocturnal only. I had never seen them in daylight. Avoid sunlight. The taped curtains. Mr. Griffiths' comment, sunlight is disruptive. No reflection? I pulled up the motel's security footage. The hallway outside room 12 showed the door opening and closing, but no one walking through it. Corrupted, I'd thought. A glitch. Pale, cold, unnaturally beautiful. The smell of blood, copper, iron. I sat back, hands trembling, staring at the screen. If I confronted them, they could kill me. If I called the police, I'd sound insane. If I evicted them, I'd lose the motel, lose everything, lose Emma's future. If I did nothing, how many people had they hurt? How many had I enabled by looking the other way, by taking their money and keeping my mouth shut? The moral weight of it crushed down on me like a physical thing. I thought of that man by the dumpster, pale and terrified, bleeding from his neck. I thought of Randy in room 11, fleeing in the middle of the night. I thought of Denise's voice. I didn't ask, and I don't think you should either. But I had to know. I had to see for myself. The decision formed slowly, inevitably. I would check room 12 during the day when they should be asleep or dead or whatever vampires were when the sun was up. I would find proof, and then I didn't know. I waited until noon when the sun was highest and my courage was as strong as it would ever be. My hands shook as I pulled the master key from the desk drawer and walked across the parking lot to room 12. The door opened silently. Inside, the air was freezing, so cold I could see my breath. It smelled stale and metallic, like old coins left in a drawer for decades. The blackout curtains made it pitch black. I fumbled for my flashlight and clicked it on. The beams swept across the room. The beds were untouched, still made with the same sheets from 8 months ago. No luggage, no personal items, no signs of life. Then I saw the bathroom door, slightly ajar. I approached slowly, my heartbeat so loud it drowned out everything else. I pushed the door open. 4 caskets, plain wood, unvarnished, lined up side by side on the tiled floor. Lids closed. My breath caught. I stood frozen, the flashlight trembling in my hand. Do I open one? I stepped forward. My fingers reached for the smallest casket, the little girl's. I touched the lid, cold and smooth. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I spun around, flashlight jerking wildly. Mr. Griffiths stood in the doorway, impossibly, silently. He shouldn't be awake, not in daylight, not now. But there he was, tall and calm, his eyes gleaming faintly in the dark like a cat's. "You've been such a gracious host," he said softly, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "It would be a shame to ruin that now." I stammered, backing against the sink. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just checking on us." His smile was thin, sharp. "It's all right. Curiosity is natural, though it does complicate things." He didn't move fast. He didn't need to. He simply stood between me and the exit, hands folded, perfectly composed. "We've been careful," he said quietly. "We don't hunt here, not where we sleep. You've noticed, haven't you? No missing locals, no bodies. We follow rules, Miss Carson. We are not careless." My voice cracked. "That man last night will be fine. A sip, a thrill. He'll forget by morning if he hasn't already. We take only what we need from those who won't be missed for long. Drifters, wanderers, people already lost." His eyes never left mine. "We are not monsters. We are survivors. Like you." The words landed like a punch. "You need us," he continued, his voice almost gentle. "Your mortgage is 3 months behind. Your tuition is due in 2 weeks. You've been struggling for years. We can stay. We pay well. We'll continue to be discreet. All you have to do," he stepped closer and I pressed harder against the sink, "is nothing. Look away, as you have been." I was trapped, physically, financially, morally. He knew it. I knew it. "You're a good mother, Miss Carson, a good daughter. You're trying to honor your father's legacy, keep his dream alive. There's no shame in accepting help, even from us." Something inside me snapped. I shoved past him with a sudden, desperate burst of strength. He didn't expect it, or maybe he let me go. I flung the door open and stumbled into the blinding daylight, gasping, my eyes watering from the sudden brightness. I ran across the parking lot, expecting to hear footsteps behind me, expecting cold hands to grab my shoulders, but nothing came. I reached the office, slammed the door, locked it, and collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Through the window, I could see room 12. The door was still open. Mr. Griffiths stood just inside the threshold, perfectly still, silhouetted against the darkness. He didn't follow. He couldn't. But his voice carried across the empty lot, soft and certain. "We'll be here when the sun sets. You will too." The door closed, and I knew he was right. I stood in the parking lot for a long time, gasping, shaking, the sunlight beating down on me like a fragile shield that would disappear the moment the horizon swallowed it whole. I considered calling the police. My phone was in my pocket. I could have dialed 911 right now. But what would I say? There are vampires in room 12? They'd commit me or laugh me out of the station. Either way, I'd lose everything. The motel, my credibility, maybe even custody of Emma if they decided I was unstable. I considered running, packing a bag, getting in my car and driving until the Crosswinds Motor Lodge was nothing but a memory. But where would I go? The motel is all I have. It's my father's legacy, my daughter's future, the only thing standing between us and complete financial collapse. And Mr. Griffith was right. God, he was right. The mortgage is 3 months overdue. Eviction notices are stacked on my desk. Debt collectors call twice a day. I wrestled with the horrible truth. The Griffiths haven't killed anyone here. They've been careful, discreet, good tenants in their own twisted way. And I've been complicit, willfully ignorant. taking their money, ignoring the signs because I needed to survive. Does that make me a monster too? I thought of Emma, studying late in her dorm room, dreaming of saving lives as a nurse. I thought of my father, who worked himself to death trying to keep this place alive. I thought of legacy and survival and the impossible weight of both. I sat down on the curb and cried. I hated myself. I hated them. I hated that I was trapped in a deal I'd never consciously made but couldn't escape. By sunset, I was still there. Room 12's door opened. Mr. Griffith stepped out, dressed impeccably as always, and walked toward the office. He saw me sitting on the curb. He paused, then nodded politely as if nothing had happened. I nodded back. He continued to the office, slid an envelope of cash under the door, and returned to his room without a word. An unspoken agreement settled into place like dust. I wouldn't ask questions. They would stay. Money would exchange hands. Life would go on. But it wasn't life anymore. It was coexistence with the unthinkable.
It's been 3 months since that day. They're still in room 12. I still take their money. And I hate myself a little more every time I see that black Lincoln in the parking lot. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers from their room, soft, rhythmic, in that language I don't recognize. It drifts through the walls like smoke, and I turn up the volume on the television in the office to drown it out. Occasionally, a guest goes missing from a neighboring room. Not missing exactly, they check out early. No forwarding address, no explanation. Room 11 last month, room 10 2 weeks ago. I don't ask. I stopped asking questions the day I nodded at Mr. Griffith in the parking lot. The children watch from the window at night. Sometimes they wave. I wave back now because what else can I do? I tell myself they're keeping their word. I tell myself no one's getting hurt, not really, just drifters and wanderers who were already lost. I tell myself I'm protecting Emma, honoring my father, doing what I have to do. But I don't really know, and I'm too afraid to find out. So let me ask you, what would you do if your survival depended on ignoring something evil? If you had a family to feed, a legacy to protect, a future hanging by a thread? Would you be braver than me? Or would you take the money, lock the door, and pretend the monsters are someone else's problem? I want to believe you'd be different. I really do. Last week, Mr. Griffith came to the office just after sunset. He asked, casually, if I knew anyone looking to sell a motel. Said they have family looking to relocate. Somewhere quiet, off the main roads. I gave him 3 names. I don't know what that makes me.
He continued to the office, slid an envelope of cash under the door, and returned to his room without a word. An unspoken agreement settled into place like dust. I wouldn't ask questions. They would stay. Money would exchange hands. Life would go on. But it wasn't life anymore. It was coexistence with the unthinkable.